Everybody, and welcome to this week's HackerCast. My name is Jeremiah Grossman, founder of White Hat Security, and I'm with Robert R. Snake Hansen out of Austin and Matt Johansson out of Houston with me as always. So we're going to talk today about all kinds of AppSec current events. You know, we don't always talk about exclusively AppSec or exclusively web security. Every now and then there's some stories that are pretty awesome that are too good not to share. So we might be talking about some of those. But the story of the last couple of weeks has been all around Hacking Team. And for those that are not familiar with Hacking Team, you know, I really wasn't when the story broke. So Hacking Team is an Italian security firm that sells surveillance software to governments, really, so they can spy on people, I guess is the only way to do it. And so they sell the malware kits, their surveillance tools, but they also traffic in 0 days to make their tools and their malware work. So they're not the guys spying on us. They're the guys selling tools to those who spy on us. So I'm not sure that makes a big difference. Anyway, there was I guess a vigilante, you might call it, guys, somebody we don't really know their real name or who it is, that hacked them and spilled out 400 gigs of all their email, intellectual property, customer lists, and whatever else onto the internet. So what we're going to talk about today is in the last few days, it's been all 0 days that have been released out of their small, 0-day cache. So, we saw Windows 0 days, Flash, and Java, and there's been some interesting movements there. But, Robert, Matt, I want to see your perspective on what's going on with this story. Actually, let's start with Robert.
Well, I think the most important part is they released whoever this person is who released all their content, they released it, and now the adversaries have said, oh, that's cool, we should actually use all these. So they've immediately turned around, and they'd already done one last week, and now they've done at least two more that I remember, two more Flash O-days, and I think also a Java exploit as well, which is pretty gnarly.
An IE and a Win32K and all this stuff. Yep.
But it's actually being used is the interesting part. It's not just that they exist. It's that it's sort of the Metasploit effect. Like once it's well known and it's in an exploit kit, it just propagates like crazy. So that's probably the most basic, interesting part about all of this. But of course, there's all sorts of aftermath once that kind of thing happens.
That's my favorite part, the aftermath. I am so excited about this. So
you're excited about the aftermath?
Yes. Yes. At least two major pieces of the aftermath are very, very good for everybody.
Okay.
Well, I guess it was yesterday. Firefox is now blocking Flash by default completely.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Amazing, right? And then today, as of this morning, Chrome is now also doing it, right? So, I mean, you're talking well over half the web, right? It's just blocked Flash by default. This comes like 1 day after all these O-days get dropped, and we like to talk about Alex Stamos, right, who's the new CISO of Facebook, publicly made a statement that said it's time to kill it. It's time to kill Flash. We got to figure out something else. Well, we already have figured out something else. We just need to use it. We just got to move to HTML5 and things like that. So
it's challenging. I think in a corporate environment, I think one of the things that keeps Flash around, I'm blanking on it right now. It's either Flash or Java that runs WebEx, and corporate environments need WebEx. So how are they going to run a browser without those two utilities?
Yeah, that's Java. That's Java. But yeah, so Flash. I mean, we already blocked. Most of us block Flash everywhere that we can anyway. At least click to play, right? And a site that I'm on every day like GitHub, it's usually no problem. But there's still one little. It's got its claws into GitHub if you want to click the copy this to my clipboard button. The only way to do that is with Flash. And so it's just this one little button that still pops up, click to play, that I wish I could just kill.
and imagine from Adobe's perspective now, I think the web just declared war on your software. I mean, that's a big deal. You wake up in the morning and half the web is now blocking your software. That's on 98% of computers around the world. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, I guess security is really making its way in the world.
Well, I think Java had the same thing happen to them a couple weeks back, right? I mean, IE just said, this whole Ask Toolbar thing, or Oracle rather had that happen to them, I guess. This whole Ask Toolbar thing, that's got to go. We're just going to block it outright. Whenever we see Ask Toolbar, we'll just understand it's malware and toss it. I mean, I think this is starting to happen more and more. And by the way, would be very surprised if these companies didn't file class action, because this is definitely abuse of their power or whatever over the browser. It's pretty interesting, though.
So, from Adobe's perspective, it actually is kind of tough. I mean, imagine they have this software called Flash that runs on a whole bunch of machines, and it's a product that they make no money on. So justifying spending security dollars on something you make no money on is difficult. I mean, how do they do that?
Yeah, I think they only make money on the dev stuff, on building it out or whatever. One other thing that was kind of interesting in that whole hacking team, should change the topic back to that, was when their email got dumped, they had something in there about effectively saying that they wanted to kill one of the ACLU guys, Chris Huygen. And that's sort of one of those things. Well, when Chris saw it, he was sort of like, am I reading this right? Are they trying to kill me? Because it's written in Italian, so the translation was a little weird. But basically, they said if they could scrape together enough Bitcoin, they would try to assassinate him through go into the darknet and find somebody to kill him. I think this is a pretty serious thing, actually, and I would be surprised. I mean, even if you could forgive them for being vulnerable, and everyone's got vulnerabilities, so that happens. But even if you forgive them for that, this is sort of one of those. How could you possibly take this company seriously after that?
So, well, here's the thing. While the act and even the contemplation of such things is pretty bad, I guess Chris, whatever he was doing out there, and we're not sure exactly what, was causing them a lot of pain. What was that exactly? What is Chris doing that causes them pain? Because that would be interesting to analyze.
Yeah, I think what it is, his stance on the Wassenaar Law, or I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it.
I think it's Wassenaar.
Wassenaar Law. Effectively, he's more or less saying anyone who sells weaponized code outside the United States or whatever is, effectively doing something illegal. I don't know exactly how this would apply with a company that's already outside the United States, but I'm sure there's a bit of a chilling effect on the entire industry as a result of that. Like, am I buying something that's illegal? So therefore, maybe I don't want to do that or whatever. I'm sure it had a bit of a chilling effect on that part of the industry, even if it wasn't directly impacting them from a legal perspective. And he was spearheading it, and I think that's probably what caused them to want to assassinate him.
Well, not the best way to go about it, I guess. So, but it is. I guess it is part of the industry of which we live in.
Yeah, one way to protect revenue, right?
Yeah, but I guess it'll be interesting when Mozilla and Google deem it safe enough to unblock those. I mean, they could just leave the temporary blocks in and make it permanent. They could do that. Mm-hmm.
And frankly, they probably should. Those technologies are really the way of the dinosaur anyway. We have better technologies. In fact, I mean, if you really think about what Flash is, you can do every single thing exactly, and same thing with Silverlight. You can do every single thing either in CSS or a movie file or and JavaScript or a combination of those things. So it really doesn't make sense for them to exist anymore.
Yeah. Pretty messed up when
you have to
say this is the industry we're in, accepting an assassination. Oh, well, that's the industry that we're in.
Well, we do deal with. I mean, there's people there's real people we're protecting our systems against. I mean, it's not we're not protecting against active nature. There's people that are making a lot of money off the things that we're trying to protect. So it makes sense that this happens every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's talk some actual cool hacking and new techniques that might make their way into the top 10 web hacking techniques later on. This one here the headline reads, "Stealing LastPass passwords with clickjacking." Okay, that's us written all over it. We love stealing passwords. We love clickjacking. Matt was investigating this one describing how it works. So Matt, what you explain first what LastPass is, because probably not everybody knows, but how the attack works.
Yeah, so LastPass, this is really interesting. So this isn't necessarily a vulnerability in LastPass, right? And something just side note. So LastPass is a password managing plugin, right? For your browser, right? So it's an add-on to Firefox or Chrome, and it can store passwords and autofill them into your password things, and you can also not know your own password. You create a password LastPass, it creates a randomly generated strong password for you and auto-populates it, right? So it's really popular. A lot of people use it. So similar story is back when we were doing our Chrome extension research a few years ago, 2011, we were able to, utilize some XSS in the Chrome extension to do the same kind of thing. And the LastPass guys were great to deal with. They were like on top of it. They're like, how can we fix this? So it sounds like the exact same thing happened this time. So everything I'm about to say, they've already hopped all over and tried to fix it, even though they weren't really necessarily the people vulnerable to something, right? So the POC here is they were using Tumblr. So if you went to tumblr.com, it's not using X-frame options. You were able to frame in tumblr.com into your attacker's site, right? And you could fool the user into clicking through the different prompts in order to dump their LastPass password into the text box, right? So the POC here is like, it almost is a fake CAPTCHA alternative. We've seen some of these CAPTCHA alternatives come up that say, click these buttons in this order, or click this picture that represents a train, or whatever it is, right? So they made a fake one of those that say, like, click these randomized buttons, 1, 2, 3, 4, but really what those buttons are doing are the 1, 2, 3, 4 prompt, the 4-click prompt to dump your LastPass password into that text box. And then the POC just pops up an alert box that says your Tumblr password is, and then whatever your Tumblr password is.
Awesome.
Yeah, so it was actually a super interesting POC. And like I said, this wasn't necessarily, like, LastPass already was had a bunch of clicks necessary. It wasn't just dumping something right into it. It was because of clickjacking, because you could frame the site in and then do some kind of social engineering in order to get it to spit out. So it wasn't necessarily, I wouldn't say this was a vulnerability in LastPass, but they already implemented a fix in order to make this much harder, right? So.
Do you know what the fix was? Like, how did they fix that part?
No, I'm not sure, but if I were them, I would not make those buttons show up in the same place every time, right? And then that would fix it. It just says pass. It just says that they patched it. I'm not sure what they did to get around it.
Huh.
I could try to find out before I write the blog post.
Yeah, that'd be good.
So that's pretty awesome. So I guess they're nothing the users to do. I guess LastPass has people using LastPass, they automatically get the update, and so they're good to go. That's pretty awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah, they have an awesome security team. They were really good to deal with for me too.
All right, so we got clickjacking, stealing passwords. Let's talk a little bit more about malware. The headline here reads, Cowboy Adventure Game malware affecting 1 million Android users. So not a trivia number of users. And Robert was looking into this one. So what's Cowboy Adventure Game?
Yeah, I mean, this is, you shouldn't be surprised by this. You download something from the internet, and it probably does something bad. If it's an executable, and you just install it, and you just hope it does nothing bad, chances are it will do something bad. And this is just another example. Some bad guy either purchased a very famous game or popular game or whatever, created a popular game, or infected a popular game. It's not really clear which. But it doesn't matter. As soon as they were able to, they inserted malware into it, bypassing what very limited checks the Android store does for malware. And this just shows you Android store is not at all safe. And as a result, this very popular game infected 1 million users, which is,
that's a tremendous number of people.
It really is, especially when you're thinking about phones, because phones typically have access to people's email. Typically has access to whatever networks that they connect to, their home office, their work, all kinds of places. So this would be very easy to pivot and take over many other networks using, effectively some, hacking of internet, hacking routers and such. And using the forgot password flow, you could probably hack into their banks and, pretty much everything that they've got. This is a devastatingly bad thing, and it's pretty bad that Android store does not have some better protections around this.
So speaking of which, I don't think we see too many stories of this, on the Apple Store. when people have Apple products, iOS products. Is that right? I mean, is this seems to be exclusively an Android platform problem and not an iOS problem? And if so, what's the difference between the two platforms?
I don't think so. I think it definitely happens on both, but I think it is far less common, and I think on iPhone, and I also think that that has a lot to do with the fact that there are stricter controls around what it can and can't do. Like they have some very clever things they do to try to elicit bad behavior out of the application, and if it doesn't elicit that bad behavior, chances are it's probably not bad.
You're talking on the Apple side, right?
I'm sorry, Apple, yes. On the Android side, I know that they are attempting to do this stuff and they've talked about it, but either they're not doing it effectively or the bad guys are just more creative or decide that they're going to attack Android because it's easier. I'm not exactly sure, but
I mean, there is some semblance of a review to get your app into the iPhone App Store, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It takes a while. It's a little bit of a harder process there, and there is some step of review at all, right? In the Android side of the house, on the Google Play Store, we got an app uploaded that was just called like malicious app or something. I mean, it was just got up doing it as like a POC, and like you could download it right now, right? There's no review whatsoever, right? It's only afterwards if people start reporting it that they can pull it.
Yeah, I ran into the same issue with Google Gadgets. Like, you could just upload whatever, and it's literally the script does nothing but hack people. I mean, there's not even a legitimate. It's not even like I'm pretending that it's good. It's like purely this is bad. There's nothing good here, and they're just like, it's not. There wasn't even a review process for me at all, and I'm sure pretty similar on the Android store. So.
And then also on the iPhone, there's a much higher level of sandboxing, right? Yeah. Like once the app actually gets on your phone.
But even if there weren't, there's still some very interesting exploits out there. For instance, the accelerometer on phones is so good now that it can actually be used as a way to listen to people as sort of a makeshift microphone. And it is the one device on a phone that does not require permissions. So it is possible for somebody to listen to people through the accelerometer.
That's crazy.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's like the laser on the windshield, checking the vibrations.
All right, let's jump to our last story here. This has to do with a new tool that's out there called Droopescan, and if you don't immediately connect like what the name refers to, it's a Droop scanner, so the Drupal framework and all their extensions. So Drupal as a framework, they've had vulnerabilities over the years, but more importantly, they've had a whole bunch of third-party plugin and library vulnerabilities over the years. So between the platform, the framework, and all the extensions, there's a ton of vulnerabilities, and a lot of them. So when you're doing a scan or an assessment on a Drupal platform, it's nice to have all those things in one spot so you can check for them all. So enter Droopescan, which is effectively a way to scan for all Drupal-based vulnerabilities on a single site. It's very similar to another tool that was recently released called, what was it called, Robert? I'm blanking on the name.
I think it's called CMS Map, I think is what it's called.
Yeah, I think they were trying to take a more broader angle on all the CMS platforms, the content management systems. But effectively, it's just another tool in, well, the good guy and the bad guy's arsenal to check for all the issues that are found out there, whether they're patched or not, because, who can remember all the vulnerabilities that have been in these respective platforms the last 2 or 3 years? So it's nice to have them all in the same place. So, which means if you're running Drupal, time to patch.
It's always time to patch if you're running Drupal.
Yeah, well, but in our experience, right? I mean, you guys correct me if I'm wrong. Drupal actually wasn't that bad as a CMS platform. It's all the plugins that were pretty nasty, that are really hard to keep up with and patch and know who's vulnerable to what. That was the hard part. Same with all the other CMSs.
Yeah, to some extent, I've definitely found some pretty nasty stuff in Drupal. And the other thing that I'm personally not a huge fan of Drupal is that it requires so much memory to run. Unlike WordPress, where you could run it on like a nothing processor with nothing memory and a tiny, tiny disk, I think Drupal uses something, and not even exaggerating, I think it's like 110 megs per process, which is incredible. So that means you can barely run it even on a pretty beefy, with a lot of memory processor, a lot of memory, a lot of disk space. It like barely hangs on. So I've never been a big fan of their architecture.
So that kind of brings us to the current events this week. We got 0 days running all over the place because a security company got hacked. That's kind of crazy. We got dumping LastPass passwords with Clickjacking. Clickjacking is apparently still a thing, so sorry about that. We got malware on the mobile platforms, and we got tools and stuff. So it's a lot to keep up with, which is again why we do Robert and Matt and myself do the HackerCast, is to try to keep everybody vaguely up to speed. So thanks everybody for listening.
No, Jerry. Don't forget about acceleration services.
Oh yeah, acceleration services. Sorry, Matt. So let me set this up, and Matt will tell you what we're up to at White Hat. So this is something White Hat has been up to or working on for a long time. Most I guess people in the web security industry know about our stats report. So we know who's vulnerable to what and how often just by the nature of the work that we do. And looking at the remediation stats, it's something we need to work on. So when we find vulnerabilities, it takes our customers about average of 160 days, 180 days or so to fix vulnerabilities, and that's to achieve somewhere between a 50 and 60% remediation rate. So a lot of companies need help with remediation, and because they don't have enough resources internally to do it on their own. So we just kind of said, well, why don't we help, really help you with that? Why don't we let us do it for you? And so we started doing this service, and I'll let Matt talk to you more about how that sets up.
Yeah, this has been my baby for the past couple of months, and I've been hiding under a rock getting this already. So so acceleration services as a whole is going to include 6 different things, one of which is our remediation services that we're starting with as of today, and I'll include a link into the blog post of that big launch. But yeah, as Jared said, we're looking at our stats and saying 193 days average to close vulnerabilities, right? That's just insane, and that's only for right around half of the vulnerabilities that even ever get closed. And these are companies that care enough about security to pay us to find these vulnerabilities, right? So obviously there's a problem out there. So we're partnering with, we have three things, right? So we have our directed remediation, which is a technology approach from our source code scanning tool, which is really cool. So say you found SQL injection in a line of code, the way our source code scanner works, as it plugs directly into your repository, we can just inject the suggested fix. Like we'll actually give you the line of code that needs to be fixed. So we're actually writing the code for you in that regard. So that's really cool, and we're going to be able to do that for more and more vulnerabilities as we go here. But then the other 2 are more of a services play, which is let's fly someone in to actually just go ahead and fix all your vulnerabilities for you, or kind of sit shoulder to shoulder with your developers and teach them how to fix these vulnerabilities, right? So teach you to fish for you type breakdown there. So yeah, we're kind of excited. We launched this partnership with Aztec Consulting, and we're starting that as of today. So hopefully get that 193 days to fix way down.
192.
Yeah. No, it's serious. We're pretty excited about this. I mean, companies they can choose a lot of different vendors out there to find their vulnerabilities for them. I mean, we want to be really the vendor that not only finds it, but it really helps you fix these issues, because it doesn't do anybody any good just to find and not fix. You're going to get hacked either way. So it's important that we get these things fixed. So we think what's going to make the most difference out there is to get the fixing going. So we're working on, like Matt said, both technology and service delivery to help our customers get secure, and sooner the better.
Cool stuff. Very cool.
So right on. So that's thanks for Robert the reminder of acceleration services. And yeah, this is this week's HackerCast. Thank you, everybody. Please rate, subscribe, share the links with your friends. Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
Bye now.